I got up about 6 this morning and just went for a walk. Last time I was here, there was 3 feet of snow and all the water was hard. So that was different. But what a beautiful morning. So we're going to get started here. Edgewater Resources. We are a waterfront design consultancy. This is all I do is work on waterfront communities. I do marinas, I do waterfronts. I've been doing it for 30 years. I'm actually based in St. Joseph, Michigan. If you want to know what your weather is going to be, call me. I'll tell you what we had yesterday because you're going to get it tomorrow. High water, all the craziness that you guys get to deal with. We've done projects all over the world. Just really love doing this kind of work. I used to be with a big giant firm and spent all my time managing things and not getting to do the work. Started this little bitty firm. We've got 3 offices, about 30 people. And this is all we do is projects just like this. So thanks for having us. We also have MRB with us. Matt or Diana, you want to give a quick intro of MRB?
Sure. MRB Group is a planning and engineering firm based in Rochester, so right down the road. We specialize, Diana and I work in the municipal services group, and we specialize in activating plans. So we'll talk later tonight about how to take the projects that are developed here in Cape Vincent and move them into implementation.
Excellent. So before we dive into this plan, Scott is going to come up and we have a steering committee. Maybe Scott, you want to help us like pick up the steering committee members, or maybe raise your hand if you're on the steering committee. A lot of different folks in the community. So if you're in the steering committee, raise your hand. That means if you guys all probably know each other. So if you have questions or comments along the way, hit them up on the street and the sidewalk. But Scott's going to tell you what's already been happening in your community. You've got a ton of things happening that are really good so far.
So just to give everybody a little background, there's a lot going on in Cape Vincent between the town and the village. And I think in the next couple years, you're going to see a lot of development and projects improving the waterfront for everybody through grant funding. Total between the village and town, you've got about 7 projects and $7 million of state grant funding coming into your communities. Each of those projects are in a different stage of development. The Club Street project, the grant that's funding this project, part of working with Department of State is developing a steering committee. The town went through a request for proposal process. We received proposals from 6 firms. We interviewed 3, and that's how the selection of Edgewater and the MRB group team came about. Edgewater is primarily, all they do is waterfront. They don't do any buildings, sewer, water, nothing. They are just a waterfront firm. His comment is if he can't throw a rock and hit water, he's not taking the job. So
You don't want me.
So starting on the outside, the first project that coming in is the East End Park project. We're ready grant. The village has East End Park. Proposing a $3.2 million project. It's 95% grant funded, so it's $3,075,000 and $161,000 through local share. This project is 60% designed. It's been submitted to the Department of State for preliminary approval. Once the preliminary approval is given, we can apply for the permits through Army Corps of Engineers and Department of State and DEC. There's 2 phases to this project. This is the second phase. It's going to develop a 400-foot deep water dock to allow larger cruise ship boats to park, spend a day in Cape Vincent, get downtown and shop. I don't know if you got the other picture as well. This is the brand new pavilion that was just being painted this morning. We'll be up and after a few years, finally get it finalized. Bathrooms, locker rooms. Wave incinerator, finger docks, new boat ramps protected, and then the other new parking lot. So that's about a $3.6 million project. The other projects you got going on is down to the main village dock, the village owned municipal dock, Essenstein dock, $868,000 project to take out the solid docks. We're going to put in some floating concrete docks, so high water, they're usable. And like now that we've raised them and the water's 4 feet low, you need a ladder to get to them. They're going to be usable in any way. So there's one project that we've got going on. The other projects are Market Street sewers under construction now. That's a ready project to move the sewer out of the flood area where there was some overflow, get it up to higher land. The end of each street, Real Street, Point Street, and Marcus Street, they're going to redo the seawalls, the sidewalks, and the public access to the water is all going to be redone through grants. They're all about $100,000 project each. 95% state funded. For Real Street, 107th, and Point Street, 65. And then the main project we're here for, the Club Street grant, was through the LWRP. When we did the DRI, the downtown revitalization project, when we submitted for the $10 million, the main municipal project in that was the Club Street project. We weren't awarded the downtown grant, but through that, we went through the consolidated funding application process and were awarded $843,000 towards a $1.2 million project, about a 75% grant. So with that grant money, they are acquiring Captain Jack's and the red marina covered that's falling in. And then through a dorm authority grant through New York State, they've acquired the house. And that house and the marina will be tore down. The house should be tore down within the next 2 weeks, I think. And then this fall, the marina is going to come down. So the essential planning part of this project is looking at developing this area. How can we tie in a new shoreline stabilization, waterfront, some floating docks, and then a way to distribute the people safely to the downtown businesses, to the park areas, and move everybody from the ferry over to the municipal dock, out into the community and allow the community to benefit and the businesses to benefit. So that's the point we're at in the planning stage. There is additional money from the DASNY grant, the Dorm Authority grant, to build a bathhouse there as well, a public restroom. That's currently being designed by another firm, but it's going to be incorporated into the plans here. We're not just going to place it and then design around it. So as the plans are developed, the placement of that will be.
So that's on the Village Green, not on the community park?
No,
There's no work going on in the Village Green. It's all on the waterfront.
somewhere in here. That's kind of the process for tonight is.
It'll be between the White House and Captain Jack, somewhere in that waterfront area.
Can you guys see the screen okay, or is that glary? I'm wondering if we turn up this front row of lights, maybe it would look better. Can we do that? Or I just don't know. It's glare where I'm standing.
So we just wanted to start by pointing out all the exciting things going on between the village and town and all the money that they have worked through the local development committee and the town and the village board and now this steering committee to begin to revitalize the waterfront and to promote tourism and local economic development through the waterfront. So yes, sir.
You weren't clear, is the wooden dock that's there now coming down?
The wooden dock, the municipally owned wooden dock is coming out and floating concrete docks are going in.
Oh, really? Why is that again?
That is because of the high water 2 years ago. They were unusable in 17 and 19. So they raised them, and now with the low water, they're really unusable unless you bring a ladder. So the village, working with their engineers, have
Not
went
just,
the route.
just so it's clear, it's floating docks.
Floating, yep.
Not any concrete.
Oh, floating docks, sorry.
Just so people don't.
The original proposal said concrete. They're gonna be floating docks. So they can change with the water level and will be usable regardless of.
All right.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. So the interesting part of this process tonight is, yes, very specifically, we're looking at those two little pieces, really little piece here. So why are we talking about this triangle? This is a lot of people in the room to talk about a space that's about the size of this room, right? So what we really wanted to do before we dive into that, and you have another $1 million, it's like $1 million or 1.2. It's a significant to actually build whatever we come up with here. So one of the things that we wanted to do is before we go up and do that is take a step back and go, let's make sure that the thing we build is the right thing. And in the context of all the connections to the other businesses, the waterfront and the linkages. So when you go to some of your favorite waterfront communities, and we'll talk about the whole purpose of tonight is a listening session. We haven't drawn a thing intentionally. We very specifically, we're designers. We can't wait to start drawing ideas. We very intentionally haven't drawn a thing because all we want to do is start by listening to the community about what really should happen here, what's needed, what you're excited about, what your goals are, and then we'll start to throw some ideas at you tomorrow, and we'll be back tomorrow night. You'll actually see some ideas that hopefully you'll go, hey, I heard that last night, and there it is on the paper, and here's why that's a good idea maybe, or maybe that idea isn't so good. And so we want to really take a step back and kind of suspend disbelief a little bit about other things and other properties. We're going to like zoom out a little bit and propose improvements well beyond this little site, because it's important to think about how this site is maybe the first in many steps towards, building up your community. So what we want to do is just, here's a few pictures of just what's out there. So that's the town dock that is going to come out and be replaced with floating. So a few questions here, just a few pictures of what's out there. This is all from this morning, so it's about as current as I can make it. What a stunning morning, eh? That's the existing dock just to the west. There's one boat in there right now, I believe, and there's some of the views. And one of the things that I would point out that strikes me is, for a waterfront community, you have a lot of buildings between you and your water, right? That sense of seeing the views and seeing the water is something that kind of strikes me as maybe we can work on that. This is looking down Club Street. You can see a few of this is that white home right there. And then behind it is Captain Jack's. As we move in, so Captain Jack's, so that is going to come out at some point soon. We're still working through some title issues, but that's been acquired or will be acquired as that process gets through. And then there's that White House. That house is going to come out, like I said, probably in the next week or two. And that's going to open up views of your water right away. And then that big brownish red structure there on the back side, that's all going to come out. Can you guys see okay? Yeah. Doesn't mean we won't put new boats back in there, but that one's coming out. It's fallen into the water for obvious reasons. So this is the new docks at the building between Captain Jack's and the ferry there. And then you've got, of course, the ferry landing. Sorry, the ferry landing in the background. Certainly looking forward to seeing that coming back to life. Hopefully that comes back this summer. I heard, optimistically maybe July, I don't know, as soon as possible. Hopefully that will come back. I don't know. I don't want to spread any rumors, but maybe this summer. It probably has more to do with the Canadians than with us. I'm sure everybody else would like to see this thing open. And then just kind of looking back and sort of starting to think about that experience from when you kind of get off the boat or get off the ferry and you come back into town, and what do you see? Is it possible for us to get those folks to stop in Cape Vincent before they go shooting south of town? Thinking about those kinds of things. Looking back towards there's a lot about your experience right now. There's a lot of pavement, a lot of buildings, and a lot of stuff. And these things just happen over time. It's a normal, natural process. And again, when we wanted to take a big step back tonight, is this kind of step back. Let's take a little bit of time and think through the vision before we dive headlong into building the next thing, right? Make sure we built the right thing. So, and then just looking back south, right down the street where the cars line up for the ferry and leave the town there. So the goals of this specific project is really starting to meet with you guys and understand the culture of Cape Vincent. Yeah, I'm from out of town, right? I'm from Michigan, actually. I've grown up in the Great Lakes. I'm a boater. I've been boating my whole life. I race in the Chicago to Mackinac every year. I cruise every year with my family. I'm your customer, right? I'm somebody who's going to come to town. And the nice thing is I can look at it with fresh eyes. And I got to tell you this, you've heard all the time, I'm sure, this place is beautiful. But this is head and shoulders. I've visited, I think, probably every waterfront community on Lake Ontario over the last 10 years. I've been working on projects. If you've seen the new marina in Rochester, I led the design of that. I'll show you some pictures of that. We've worked in Oswego. We're working in Geneva. We're working in Hamburg and Dunkirk and Buffalo. And lots of work. I worked in this little city down Brooklyn or Staten Island, somewhere down there. That's a nice place. This community is stunning. It's absolutely, I live in a small little beach town. I live in a town where people come to visit. I understand what it's like to have, it feels like your economy is 100 days long, except most of us live here all the time. Like, don't forget about us. We certainly want to talk about the tourists and the people that come in the winter, but we also need to make darn sure that it works for you guys all year round, right? That's super important. We're certainly going to look at all the existing stuff. There's been a lot of studies. We're going to look at all those things. There's code implications, safety things, all of that stuff. That's real basic for us. I want to hit something really important here. You've all probably been to these meetings and you do a visioning session and people ask you, what do you want? And I call this the ice cream conversation. Oh, you like vanilla and pistachio and butter pecan, and we got mint chocolate chip in the back, and everybody's excited. And nobody talks about the vegetables you have to eat before you get to the ice cream. Oh, but wait, just be visionary. It'll be great. You're not being visionary. I know it's $100 million, but if you're just visionary, it'll happen. That's not visionary. That's what we call imaginary. Okay. Visionary is when we come up with a plan that we're all excited about, that we can now build a real implementation strategy that's got a solid financial underpinning, that has some realistic implementation possibilities. That's visionary, right? So we want to, imaginary is fun, but it's cruel in the end because you see things that you'll never get, right? So don't ask me for a big Ferris wheel because I don't want that. And we're going to facilitate a process where we're going to figure this out together. I'm not going to here to tell you what to do. We're here to kind of talk about it, and I'm going to put ideas on the table tomorrow. You're going to look at them. You're going to go, like that one, hate that one, and get out of town immediately before I light you on fire. Who knows? You might like, odds are good, you're going to like a little piece of one plan, a little piece of another plan. We're going to come up with 2 new ideas in the conversation. We're going to kind of get through this together. All right. So that's what I hope we get. And tonight I want you to feel really comfortable tossing out ideas and when we get there. So we call this process continuous community involvement. All through this process tonight, it's listening. Tomorrow we're drawing. We're going to be right back here tomorrow night showing you ideas. You're going to tell us what you like and don't like. We're going to then go back and work on refinements. We'll come back. We haven't figured out exactly when we're going to do the next meeting, but we'll come back with the refinement and go, are we on the right track? And then we're going to look at implementation strategies. Matt's going to go through some things. You guys have, you do pay some taxes in this state. But I will say this, if you do what I do and you help communities build things, you are blessed with an incredible amount of money invested from the state. I don't know of any other state that pours as much money into the smaller communities as New York. So love it or hate it with your taxes, at least there's a lot of money being invested back in the community, and I'll stay away from the politics of it, but certainly you have an advantage here with the grant funds that are coming your way. And I'll leave it there, but that's a big deal. Well, phasing strategies, funding strategies, grant strategies, federal grant strategies, talk about all those. This is meeting number 1 tonight. You'll see tomorrow we have meeting number 2. We're going to have 2 other meetings. They might just be online meetings. We'll figure it out. I'm sure I'll be back in town and we'll see the results. So we start with a blank page. We've literally drawn nothing. Of course, we're going to pay attention to all the other work that's been done. We're not going to pretend nobody's thought about this before. We've got all the studies. We're looking at those, but we wanted to start fresh a little bit here. Tonight is about the community vision. I want you guys to tell us what's special about Cape Vincent, what you are most excited about with economically sound alternatives. And then you get down to the end there, authenticity is key. So authenticity is probably the most important thing for us. And I want to be clear on what that means. Has anybody said, hey, gee, have you seen the new Starbucks? Let's go. Because what might it be? No, you know exactly what it's going to be, right? It's the same green, it's the same chairs, it's the same smell, because they've manipulated it to make this thing perfectly the same everywhere. Let's not do that, okay? We have no interest in doing that in Cape Vincent, because what people remember when they visit waterfront communities or special places, they remember that was something special and distinct. What was the story of that place, right? And I want you to help us figure that out. I'm not going to look on Wikipedia and go, oh, well, something about the French and Indian, this and the War of 1812 and Napoleon. No, you guys tell us the story. And we want to make sure that everything we build facilitates you telling that story to your visitors so they remember you and go, yeah, this isn't like Clayton, this isn't like Sackett's Harbor or Alex Belly or these other places. This is a very special spot. It's distinct, and we're going to build on what's here. So some good examples of what this might look like. This is a project. This is actually my hometown. My office is right here, and it's St. Joe Benton Harbor. It's about 10,000 people. It's right on Lake Michigan, and that's in that yellow area is about 567 acres of formerly heavily polluted industrial land, and they started to rebuild it. We actually looked at a little piece of it. It's actually this little piece right here. And what I want you to notice on here is this big factory. We happen to be the home of Whirlpool, the appliance maker, dishwashers and all that. And if you bought a Whirlpool appliance probably anytime before about 1995, it got built in this building right here before they moved all the production overseas like everybody else. So right in the middle of the site, there used to be a factory that went right here across the site. And we put together this project here. This is now about developing the waterfront. So it's about linking these 2 communities back together and creating more waterfront housing and bringing people to the community. So when you start to think about, well, how are we going to design something like this? And in this case, we needed a big hotel because Whirlpool wanted 90 rooms. So we have a 90-room hotel, and there's condos and other stuff there in a marina. We built that new marina. But we could do anything, right? We could tell any kind of story we want. But what we thought is, well, what's the story of this place, right? And so this is my town, but I want you to think about this story for your town. So we went back to the first big St. Joseph hotel. It was right on the beach. And just like all these big timber hotels, it lasted about 6 years before it burned to the ground. But it was built by John Oliver Plank, who's the guy who built all the hotels for the railroads. He built the big one in Chautauqua. He built the Grand Hotel. If you've seen the movie Somewhere in Time on Mackinac Island, he built these super romantic, wonderful old hotels. Well, that one was about 400 yards from our site. So we thought, well, that's an interesting place to start. We ended up designing that building there, and it's like an 8-story cottage. I'm not proposing a 10-story building in your town. This is a different place. And when we got into looking at it, we said, okay, we like that sort of language, but we're in the middle of a shipping area. Well, that's pretty darn cool when an 800-foot laker does a turning basin on the balcony right there 8 feet from the wall. It's kind of fun. People get excited about it. If one more person tells me that, oh, we need to get that shipping out of our community, it's ruining it. I'm like, no, you're completely wrong. People love to look at the boats. So first of all, capitalize on what's special about your place. Watching these ships go by, I think we saw 5 or 6 today. We want that. That's cool. In my opinion, that's my opinion. But people, obviously these people hate it. They clearly won't come because that boat might be there. I'm sure Manitowoc's been here. But people have big weddings literally on that same deck and the ships are there, and that's cool. When you come inside, we created a restaurant. We called it Plank's Tavern. Remember John Oliver Plank? He used to create all these taverns. And when you would come, you'd get on the steamboat, and you'd come across from Chicago, and you'd come to this place, and you'd get on the Truscott boat to go up to the resort, and you'd have one of Plank's Taverns. And so we have a Plank's Tavern. When you get into the main area, all of the artwork on the entire hotel is based on the agriculture or the beaches. Each floor has a different theme based on our environment, right? That glass sculpture you see at the top of the screen there, if you look at it, the blue is facing west where the water is, and as you move to the east, it's all that moves to the sand colors, and then we're full of orchards, just like upstate, all the apple orchards and the cherry orchards and so on. You can't see it very well in here, but that little flourish in the railing, there's only one person in the city of St. Joseph, besides the design team, who knows what that railing detail is. And it's a guy named Steve Upton, who's the grandson of the founder of the Upton Machine Corporation, which was Whirlpool. And on the original patent drawings for the first washing machine, that was a flourish on there. Now, who cares? Big deal. It's cool. I had to put some kind of railing in there. Think a little bit harder about telling the story of the site. They built 1 million washers and dryers, literally where these people are standing, and to have this little connection to the past. And you can tell these stories, and I can go on, but this is what I'm talking about, is making sure that every decision you make, you got to pick something. We'll pick something relevant and appropriate for the community. So protecting the unique character of Cape Vincent. I'm assuming you don't want to turn yourselves into Clayton or Alexandria Bay.
No.
All in favor? Good. Moving on. These are my recommended guiding principles. You tell me if I'm wrong. This is what I think of when I think about this. So Cape Vincent is different and special, and let's make sure we protect that. Doesn't mean we don't change anything. It just means we always keep in mind what's appropriate here. Expanding access to the waterfront, and access both for people to get to it, but also to see the water and get out there. And would it be nice to be downtown and look out and see the ships coming by, except through a tiny little window. Maybe we can get a bigger, more expansive view, for example. Maybe we can get it easier for people to get on the water. Maybe, how many of you get on the water regularly? About a third? Yeah, that's, I don't care, just get on the water. Yeah, about a half, that's a lot. In most communities like this, believe it or not, it's under 10 to 20%, which is awful, right? Because it's this amazing, amazing resource. So we want to create as much opportunity as we can. I think a lot of people like to get on the ferry, because for some people, that 5 or 10 minute boat ride across the water for a little kid, that's like the greatest adventure in the world. They're crossing an ocean. They're going from one country to another. It's this crazy cool thing. Those of us who grew up boating are like, that's kind of neat. But for other people, it's a big deal, right? And that will draw them here. It's one more reason for them to come to your community. Become more inviting to visitors, enhancing the quality of life for the residents, right? So when a transient boater comes to town, is it really clear and obvious to them where they're going, right? As a boater, I come in, I go to Beaver Island, and there's only 2 marinas there, and I'm still not sure which one I'm supposed to go to. And I'm looking at the charts and Bob, is this the right place? So let's make sure you've got a lot going on in your waterfront. Let's make sure that that's really apparent for the boaters. They can understand where they're going, for example. Make sure it's financially viable, authentic. And I guess I'd ask, what else? Those are some of my suggestions. Is there anything else that you guys think of as, and a guiding principle is, look, it's not about a detail, but it's about if we achieve this principle that we're on the right track. So do any of those, like, are those missing the mark on any of those? Okay, sir.
Can you go back to that slide where you were going to build that big dock on the water, you said cruise ships could come in and whatnot?
Oh, way back. Yep. That one is,
The first one.
yep, all the way back. Give me a sec, right there, that one.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm not involved in this project. It's just one of the ones that's out there. So Scott can answer questions with this if you've got them. So,
How big is that dock?
400 feet, I believe it's 400 feet long.
400 feet. Is there gonna be slips? The J's, in other words, how many boats you're figuring, in other words, trains and boats?
that's
This
probably
is
on the
the
next
other
one. Yeah.
There's two ends to it. This is the east, so this is the west side. There's another end that's gonna have all the transient boat slips. So this is the main project. The deep water is kind of a phase two. So this would be the main project that has the slips for transient boaters. And parking.
How many transient boats are you figuring you're gonna be able to utilize this dock?
Jerry, do you remember?
The actual design, there's a couple improvements, but like the motors that are coming off the shore, I think probably 12 boats could easily fathom, maybe more. With the room to expand, the money permitting,
How big of a boat is that gonna accommodate?
depending on where you tie up, the outside, length is over 100 feet.
Okay.
You know, the water duct between your dock and
I don't know. It's, yeah,
you know, the water duct.
I don't know. I'm certain that the design team was looking at it for a deep water dock, so. So I'm gonna keep us rolling over here.
We need where that made 35.
Okay. So one of the things, we do this all the time. And one of the things that we did is just from a boater's perspective, thinking about your community, for example, and it's not all about the boats, but that's certainly a part of it. We did a survey of over 4,000 boaters on the Great Lakes to talk to us about their favorite harbor in Michigan, of the 87 public harbors for this particular survey. And the one that they chose, number one, is this one. It's in Charlevoix. And certainly after all the French people came through here, they went to northern Michigan. And yeah, this is a different scale. This is bigger, but I want to point out what people liked about this. They like the fact that this is an all transient marina. It has a public boardwalk on the edge. It has a beautiful green space behind it. And right behind those trees are all the shops. Does this look at all familiar to you guys? This is so close to what you have. And the fundamental point here from a boater's perspective is I want to be able to pull up the boat, get the kids off the boat now, go away, go find the ice cream, and they'll go off and run. They'll go free range, and you can look up and see the shop, and they can look back and see the boat, and everybody feels safe and comfortable, right? That's what really makes people feel comfortable in a space like this. For this example, we actually looked at the number 3 harbor, which is one in Lexington, which is funny that this came in number 3 because we were in the process of completely re-engineering the harbor because it's in such terrible shape. It needs to be completely rebuilt, and it still came in as the 3rd most popular harbor. It's not always about how good are the docks, it's how good is the community, right? And so you have an excellent community, you have the same kind of character. But what we help them look at is, you see all that pavement up here, all this stuff, all this parking? Yeah, I'm gonna ask you, you only have so much land on your water. Let's make darn sure that what we put on that water is the most important thing we can put there. And that's rarely parking cars. We need parking. I'm not saying we don't need parking. I know it snows. Not everybody wants to walk, but we can think about it differently. We actually looked at this plan and the community chose this, which is that next step. So so that little building right here is this building here. And we just pulled the parking back. We create great drop-offs. You can actually get closer to the marina in this plan with your car than you could in the other one. So you have better access for your cars to get your stuff to your boat, but we have more public space, more public waterfront. And so that was kind of the idea here. You had a question?
Is that realistic for Cape Vincent though? Because we're seasonal.
Yep.
Like only 3-4 months out of the year we're warm. So
Yep.
docking boats,
Yep.
deeper than water isn't going to bring us any revenue. So
Yep.
I think
All
realistic.
of these are seasonal harbors just like that. So if the answer to that question, let's talk about that tomorrow when we've got some things to react to. So I'm just showing some examples of the thought process about mostly about pedestrian connections between your water and your town, because that's the magic of helping all the town businesses succeed and making people want to stick around here and know where they're going. So, sir.
Given your statement of the pedestrian interest in being near the waterway, is there any opportunity to provide a pedestrian walkway between the main village dock westerly over towards the ferry dock and maybe even beyond that?
So you're suggesting from this dock all the way back up to the ferry dock?
Yeah.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something.
I think your statement that people love to be walking along the waterfront.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think somebody embarking from a boat sitting in the main dock, it'd be wonderful if they could walk along the waterfront right in the center of the village for a space of distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know how far you could go, but maybe you could even go westerly of the customs dock.
Mhm. Yeah, we've been meeting, and just so you know, we've been meeting all day with stakeholders. So we met with.
That you have condos in front of that, but, you know, a lot of villages still have walkways in front of condos. And the fact that condo is there, I wouldn't think would prohibit the village from considering a walkway. I'm sure the condo properties are not going to be very happy about it, but we're looking at the bigger picture here. And when I look at other villages, there are a lot of walkways in front of condos. If you look at Clayton, and you'll find that situation there.
Sure.
So I'm just saying that I hope somebody will look at that opportunity of a walkway right here in the downtown part of the village.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sir, I'll come back to you in just a second. Sir.
Thank you for the presentation, and question to you about the early part of your presentation when we talked about a title will be cleared next week. Could you clear up the title issue, or not the specifics of the, I guess maybe let me rephrase what I want to ask you. Who are the entities or people that own the three structures there that you're talking about, the White House, Camp Jackson, and the Brown Roof Boathouse?
So you've got, yeah, okay, well, I'm gonna let Scott take that one.
The only title or land transaction that is in legal hands is Captain Jack's. The White House has already been turned over. The town owns it. They have clear ownership of it. This marina property is already in clear ownership of the town. So those properties are good. There's been a signed purchase offer on Captain Jack's. It's in the lawyer's hands now on right away or property issue to be worked out between the attorneys.
So the village of Cape Vincent is not in ownership at all of this infrastructure.
The village is not of these. This is a town project. They work together. The village was part of obtaining the funding to purchase this, not purchase it, but to demolish this house and demolish this. The village was involved in obtaining the funding, and then the village actually turned it over to the town because the town was buying the house. So the village and the town have worked very closely on this whole project to bring the funding in.
Yeah,
So, but the ownership of them,
about the ownership.
the ownership of those properties is with the town right now.
Okay, and one that's where the title isn't clear yet, you're still working on it. When it's finished, done, completed, signed, dated, who's going to own
The town will own all three of those properties.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ma'am?
What's the status of the underwater land there that's privately owned? Is that going, the village or the town going to own that? Or are they leaving it, its current owner?
I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the answer to that. My understanding is that these properties were underwater deeded by the state to the landowners, and that was transferred when it was sold to the town. That's my understanding. I'm not an attorney, so I can't verify that for you, but that's how it was explained to me. That these properties, the underwater land was surveyed and deeded as property. I know that's not the case in a lot of waterfront communities, but that's how it was explained to me.
Sir in the back.
Just kind of a follow-up question to where I was going with, asked about the other side. Have you been charged with how many trains and slips or boat slips are going in this relocation?
There's been nothing specific to that, but the conversations, we've been talking to folks all day. All the individual stakeholder meetings. So we met with Mr. Trotter and some of the others. We met with the folks who own this facility. We met with the homeowners here, or 2 of the 3. We met with the condos association and many of the businesses. So one of the things that you're going to see tomorrow is we're going to draw 2 or 3 options, and one of them will be pretty minimalist. If we only ended up with just these 2 bits of property that we have now, what's an idea? And then other ideas might we look at, and we had a conversation, what if we looked at everything like you suggested from the public dock all the way over to the ferry and look at that whole thing? And, that's a conversation that, to just test ideas and see what's out there. So we'll be looking at all those, and we'll have a much better idea tomorrow about what could fit in there. So I don't know yet.
And I'm just trying to get a handle on your the project down here. How much the influx of tourism coming into Old Town Cape Vincent, transit boats and everything else as increasing parking capacity.
So, yeah. Sure.
The wooden dock is coming out. You showed a picture in Michigan of, I'm gonna call it F-shaped ramps that go out to either side of the dock.
Uh-huh.
How far to the east on that wooden dock can you go with F-shaped docking?
Not very typically. So what we look at is in terms of riparian rights and access, you need to make certain that you're controlling your access and at most sharing access. You can't build up to somebody's riparian line and limit their access. It's all Section 10 waters of the US, so we all have the right to go on the water, but I can't build a structure. It's a little odd right here because of the way this is all put together. This is all so tight on top of each other. I'm amazed anybody can get anywhere in or out of any of this. It's pretty crazy. So we'll look at all that tomorrow. When you see the ideas tomorrow, let's react to what's possible based on kind of current modern standards. So one more follow-up.
I want to key on something you said earlier. When you get off the boat and you want the kids to go somewhere, obviously a playground or green space, but at the same time, you need a bathroom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love our brand new boathouse, guest pavilion over at East End Park.
Mhm.
I can see that plump right there and be a perfect solution, but obviously we want to make it different,
Sure.
prettier.
But you definitely need that facility for
You need
sure.
a bathhouse, but why not put a pavilion on it where the kids can go play checkers?
Absolutely. Sure. Ma'am, you've been real patient over here.
On the picture up there, the red, is coming down. What is next to it that way?
This one? That's another boathouse owned by Mr. Trotter.
Has nothing to do with.
Will that come down?
No. We're going to talk about some ideas tomorrow that might propose something different, but I don't control it. But I've had a conversation. I said, do you mind if we propose ideas? It's like, go to town. Propose better ideas. Clearly something needs to be done. So.
As he said already, throughout the day today, we had very productive 30 to 40-minute meetings with each of these landowners, and we discussed public access and boardwalks and walkways and how they might look. So those conversations have been taking place, and that we've gotten their input from all those landowners, whether it be on the waterfront or in front of the homes, but moving people is one of the keys.
So what I'd like to do is I'm gonna take one more question, then I want to jump back to the presentation because I got a lot more to show you. So we'll take one more and then we'll jump back if that's okay.
Let's try to make it short. 2 years ago, there was some serious consideration given to creating the entire area inside the break wall as a harbor of refuge by connecting the mainland to the western end of the break wall. And there was a lot of, I think, very worthwhile ideas of what that could mean in terms of the boating attractiveness of the area, and also enhancing the use of the downtown area in terms of a walkway from the mainland all the way out over the break wall. I don't know what happened to that proposal, but I think that proposal had a lot of merit. And I hope before we jump into something, we take a look again, because I know there was some federal assistance that was in the offing at that time to create the harbor of refuge by creating the connection at the upstream end of the break wall structure to the mainland. So I'll quit there, but I
Yeah,
don't
so
really.
Can I just add one thing to this comment? Just to add your comment, sir, one of the reasons the town, one of the things that helped the selection process is Greg's partner at Edgewater has a lot of history with refuge, harbors of refuge and past work on working on those and helping write some of the bylaws. So that future growth in where the town and village want to be came into play in the selection process, knowing that in the future he could help move that project along as well. So that was part of the selection process.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna jump back to the presentation. So we're kind of I want to be respectful of your time, but we got a lot to show. And let's just jump to here. So how many of you been to Rochester, the new Port of Rochester Marina? That's weird. I didn't go raise my slide. There it is. So if you've seen this, this is a project I spent about 8 years of my life on trying to get this built. If you haven't been there, basically this was the fast ferry site. And I'll pick on Charlotte a little bit because this is a community that for once in their life has solved the parking problem, except on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And you can see that there's like 1,400 parking spaces. And in the process of proposing a new marina that would go right here, people got really, really excited about the loss of a few hundred parking spaces. And I'm like, you realize you have all this parking right now and you have about 4 businesses. Because people don't like to hang out in parking lots. They want to hang out in beautiful communities. And so we had this conversation about what are your favorite communities? And what did I hear? I heard Sackett's Harbor, I heard Cape Vincent, Sodus Bay, Skinny Atlas, on and Coburg. Now you're on the lake, all these cool places. None of them have 1,500 parking on their lake. So yes, parking matters and we'll come back to it, but that's a good example. But this is a before picture and that's after, which is pretty cool. I'm really, really proud of this. So I'm gonna brag a little bit. This is cool. You think about what's possible. You would not have guessed that you could turn that into that, right? Or you could turn that into that. Or you could turn that into that. That's all public now. A lot of that was behind fencing. It's all opened up to the public. This is Skip Shumway's property right across the river. That was, we all remember 2016. That was fun, wasn't it? We work really hard. My partner's coastal engineer. We really work hard on understanding high water levels, low levels, and nothing warms an engineer's heart when he draws to the record high water level and adds 3 inches and you build it and you get to take that picture. It did not flood. And the Coast Guard had to abandon their facility to come over into our marina. So we're real proud of that. But you think about these things, you actually, when the gangways go up to the docks, that's always fun and exciting. Even when you have floating docks, you have to really think this stuff through, but that's kind of a normal water level. And then if you look, watch right back here a second, see that water pops up right up to the edge. But, you're all familiar with the hydrology. I can give you, how much lecture on water levels do you guys want? I can give you the 1 minute lecture, which is rain in, evaporation out. That's really all you need to know. Everything else is pretty much irrelevant. It's about 98% of everything that matters is how much precipitation comes in and how much evaporates out, how much goes downstream as a rounding error. So we can get mad at the IJC all we want. It's mostly evaporation. So I hate to break it to you. We just have to pray for good weather, fundamentally. Fortunately, this is our current water level. This is the Corps of Engineers chart, clearly self-explanatory. So there's nothing self-explanatory about this chart. What you're seeing is 3 years actually. So on the left, you see 2019 at the top, 2020 and 2021. So you guys remember 2019, that red line is the actual water level. What you're seeing is what we call the monthly mean. So that's not every day. They just average all 30 days of the month and that's our level and it goes up here. So it was way up here. The blue line is the long-term historic average over that 3-year period. This blue on the bottom, that squiggly thing, that's the historic average from 1918 to 2020. So 102 years is that squiggly line across the bottom. We are, I took this, I downloaded this last night. So we're right here. This green, so we're actually below, we're well below. We're probably 6 inches below your average water level right now. That's a good thing. It's not crazy low, but we're probably all, let's take a deep breath and enjoy a little bit low water. This red zone is the potential zone based on the climate projections for the next 6 months. So we're in a pretty good spot, but that's what's happening right now. Suffice to say that whatever we design needs to keep this in mind at all times. We will not forget that. We talk a lot about how do you prepare for water level changes. You keep an eye on these things and you design for it accordingly. So I won't go too far into this. If somebody's got questions, we can come up and talk about it later. We think long and hard about how you build things to keep them from flooding, to make sure that we don't look silly a long time from now. It is interesting how you probably all recall, it was not very long ago, we were setting record lows. In like 2013, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron set record lows. And we had been in a very prolonged period of low water. We actually got to the point where clients, and the best climate science at the time was saying they're going to continue to go down. The warmer temperatures are going to cause a decrease in ice, increase evaporation. Long-term water levels will keep going down and down and down. And people started asking us to build our structures lower, right? And I have a rule when I do coastal engineering. When you look back at something like this long chart, when you have 102 years of data, you start to notice that we've been here before a lot, and it's gone up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down a lot. And the question I was asked is, what would Grandpa do? Grandpa would have walked out without any of the benefit of any of these charts, and he'd look around and go, what has survived all this time? What's been here, and what got destroyed? And there's usually a line you can see. There's actually a physical line. You can actually see it. You know, let's build on that side of the line and not on this side of the line, irrespective of what it's doing right now. We've seen a lot of people build houses in dumb places and forget about these water levels. And then they, well, it's been down for 10 years. It's got to keep going down. And, you know, ultimately it's going to keep going. The best climate science in 2010 is that it's going to keep going down. The best climate science as of last year was that it's going to be more volatile and is most likely to stay within the range. What I'm telling you is we don't know what it's going to do, but I would not bet against it coming back up and setting new record highs or going back down to low. Most likely it's going to move more quickly between the highs and lows than we might remember. Sir?
If you go to the areas that are affected by tides on a daily basis,
Yep.
they have a more extreme water change.
For sure. Some of them, yeah.
10 years. They have you watch the look at the docks, the structures, they're designed with stuff pulled in the dock. So no matter what level they are, boats can come in and down the dock. Are you taking this into account in designs?
Absolutely.
Good for high water and bad for low water?
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of boaters, not all, but the majority of boaters prefer a floating dock, particularly for their home dock, because they can set the boat in the lines once. No matter what the water does, everything's the same. And the dock, the relationship of the dock and their boat to each other is the same. Ben's actually in our Florida office. And so he deals with this all day long with the tides. So we absolutely consider that in everything we do. So that's a quick water level lecture. We'll pay close attention to it. We think about another really important thing is wind setup. You know, inevitably when the water's high, and you've noticed this, if you have a really strong westerly, all of a sudden your lake level has gone up 2 feet, and then the next day it's gone back down. That's from literally, you probably know this, but it's literally the wind is pushing the surface water over to the east. And so the lake literally comes up, and then when that wind drops, it sloshes back down to the west, like a big bathtub. And so inevitably when that's happening, so now your water's up 2 feet higher for a short period of time, maybe 20 or 30 hours during a big storm. And of course, on top of that, you got the big waves, right? So all of those things are things that we think about when we talk about levels, and we'll continue to keep that. Some other projects we've built, this is a big one in Chicago, not super relevant other than what's really important about this is the public access. One of the things that kind of marina design from 30 years ago was put my fence up, privatize my thing, and build my special little private club. Everybody else keep out. We don't really do that anymore. We try to make as much public as possible. We want, most boaters actually want that activity. You want to see what's happening around you. Yeah, you still might block off the docks themselves for security, but not necessarily the edge. We want people to get in there. And that's a really good example. This is a project we're working on in Muskegon. And right now, you know, it's going to be a ton of condos and all these sorts of things. But what I want you to notice is what's out there now. The only thing public on this site right now is this path. Actually, none of the rest of that land is public. The new proposal actually makes everything else public. So all of this other land becomes public with a new marina out here. This, again, it's a bigger project, but the principle somebody pointed out is, you know, having public spaces, you know, in front of new condos in the water is an important, is a beneficial thing. You know, I'm not going to comment necessarily at putting it in front of existing condos, but certainly if anything new is out there, the idea, anything new we build, we try to very hard to have public access in front because we think that's important. Yeah.
On these projects that have actually been started and completed and now they're being utilized by the public for all these different locations, like Michigan, Muskegon area.
Yep.
What's the percentage of tourism and income increase for the community that's taken place from before and after these communities?
That's a good question. It's not specific to any one place. Obviously, the impact is hugely different. So it,
Increased dramatically, like
Oh.
over 20%?
yeah, generally, I would say that, but it can be, I mean, it's hard to say that because in Chicago, you can build a $100 million project in Chicago and it's a rounding error because it's Chicago.
Because it costs a lot to
Sure.
make it.
Absolutely,
You
yep.
even know, like 25%, like probably gonna be
Sure.
$1 million on the community,
Mhm.
of the cost besides the grants, we're still gonna pay for it. So if you don't have tourism guaranteed to come in with this design, if we don't have guaranteed income increase, then it's not gonna make a difference. We're actually gonna be in the people hole. So
You don't, I wouldn't make an assumption that it's all public, because one of the things that we'll talk about in funding strategies is public-private partnerships. So that project back here, this one, that's being funded primarily by the private sector, and the private sector is actually building all of that park space because that's part of their getting approval process. So I wouldn't make an assumption just yet that everything is.
it's not an assumption. I just would like to see instead of like
Sure.
airflow charts, like to see income
Yep.
from property with a prime example.
Sure.
of
You want
how
to see
this
economic
would be
impact.
application.
Yeah, we'll do economic impact as well. Yep, that's a very good point. Yep. Excellent.
What place is that right there?
This is South Haven in Michigan also. Sorry for the Michigan examples. It's just easy for me to pop them up, but
My favorite spot.
yeah, you like this one?
Well, no, it's like it's a town I
Yeah.
grew up nearby.
Okay, so this right here is the Michigan Maritime Museum. And this is what's there today. And this is what we're building for them. We're actually building them a whole new marina and actually, again, taking a lot of old stuff, which is all this parking, and getting rid of all that and turning it into more of a public green space. So again, expanding that public access everywhere we can. That's just happens to be what that building's gonna look like. We actually do some buildings, but that has to be on the water. So, this is another small waterfront community. We work in communities of all sizes, but I'm gonna start with this picture is to just show you just a ton of images. And some of them you'll like and some of them you'll hate. And I want you to be open about them. If you see something you like or you have an idea, that reminds me of someplace that I love. What I like about this picture is this is over in Europe. And one of the things that the Europeans do a lot better than us is we tend to build purpose-built spaces. We build a public space to do one thing and to do it really, really well. And if it's not being used for that one thing, it's almost empty and worthless. So in this particular space, everywhere where you see all those tables in the morning, that's where all the fishermen are selling all the fish. And in the afternoon, it's a public promenade. And in the evening, all the fish that the restaurants bought are served in the restaurants. And that space changes 3 times during the day for how it's used. And in a small community like this, in a small site, we need to make sure that we design a space that's flexible, that you can have different uses, different times of day, different times of the month, different times of the season and around the year. So I think that's something about this that I think is an important idea. Maybe it wouldn't look like this. This is a little bit much maybe. But that theory about let's make our spaces multifunctional. You know, in terms of restaurant scale, this is the kind of scale I think, this sort of feels like what you have going on here. It's not the same buildings, but some of this outdoor dining, you had a lot more outdoor dining last summer. Is that working? Do you guys enjoy that? That more of that outside activity? Do you like to see that?
That's nice.
Yeah. So that would be something I think to try to think about the way we use our streets. So if you think about Broadway, for example, Broadway is
just one conversation. It's really hard to
Right.
stay focused on.
I'm sorry.
Say with these sidebars.
Yeah, folks, if you could just be respectful of everybody else, thank you.
Yeah.
So if you look at Broadway, for example, it's about 53 feet wide. We checked on Google, maybe it's 50 to 55. And it's 2 lanes of traffic and 2 lanes of on-street parking. So I would not suggest to you that we need fewer lanes of traffic on Broadway, but it doesn't need to be 53 feet wide. Standard roadway width for that speed, or what it should be in there, 25, 30 maybe, is about 12-foot lanes. So you need 2 12-foot lanes, that's about 24 feet, and the parking is about 8 feet. You need another 16. So you need about 40 feet, and you've got 53. So what's wrong with that? Well, first of all, building a 53-foot wide road over a 40-foot road is about 35% more expensive to build and maintain and pave and plow and everything.
Your state.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's, yeah. So you got that.
53.
Yeah. So and we call these a road diet, and yes, I know it's the DOT. The DOT knows about these things. We're calling them road diets. It's good for them because when this road gets, and it doesn't mean you do it immediately, but the next time someone says we need to deal with the road, why don't we make it a little smaller? Let's make more space for this kind of stuff in front of your shops and restaurants, right? In front of the parks. Again, I realize this isn't your waterfront, but it's your community in the way that it feels. And I think you can have more of this kind of stuff and actually be paying less in taxes for your road maintenance. And by the way, the traffic will drive at the speed limit. And they will also, sorry, I'm losing my focus here.
Guys, can you put down the side conversations? We can't hear anything up here. Thank you.
So if you bring that down, you're paying less money to do all that stuff, and you have better spaces, and you get more green space. So I definitely think that's something we should think about. Plus, you can also have bump outs where you actually make that crossing for, not everybody here can walk real fast across 53 feet of road. We can have a safe pedestrian crossing that's only 24 feet, literally less than half the width. And I want to reemphasize this. You're not taking out 1% of the capacity of the road to handle the cars. We haven't reduced any roadway capacity at all. People are just going to drive the speed limit naturally because if that's the speed you feel like you should be driving.
It's all for the parade.
It's for the parade? Tell me about this parade. Here's some other pictures of cool outdoor dining. This happens to be Niagara on the Lake. You're all familiar with that, I'm sure. Maybe you've not all been there, but that's on the west end of the lake. Cool outdoor stuff. I think that's Martha's Vineyard. How about food trucks? This could be cool, not in the sense of coming in to compete with your restaurants, but what if you had a food truck festival? I think you guys have a little festival sometime around the 4th of July. What if, it's overwhelming, right? So what if we could spread that out over the summer and have maybe there's a food truck festival, like a taste of the Cape or something, and you bring in a bunch of cool food trucks for a weekend and they're on this new cool streetscape, for example, or maybe, so we're not competing with the existing restaurants. Maybe there's a Tuesday night food truck night or something. I don't know, but you start to think about how do you support and complement your existing restaurants, not compete with them, support them and complement them. But this is a cool way to start and incubate new businesses. Right? It's a heck of a lot expensive to do a food truck than it is to do a bricks and mortar restaurant. And that's a cool thing. They can go community to community. So I think that's an idea worth considering. Cool and interesting. That's another one in Niagara on the Lake, which I always find it funny. You can put palm trees in Ontario. That seems odd to me. It's a weird choice, but maybe it was banned. Thinking about parking. If there's new buildings, parking under the structures, that's what you see. That's the whole point of this particular image is there's parking tucked underneath. If you build something new like that, let's think about tucking the parking underneath and not outside, for example. This one's, that's Skinny Atlas. Absolutely love that scale and character, the little bakery there. You guys have probably been to this place more than me. That's a little bit much for me. This from a waterfront, in my opinion, that's a wall on the water that the rest of the community can't see through. That's not my favorite view of the lake there. Sackett's Harbor. And I purposely cropped this image because if I zoom back, you see the big parking lot in between there. But Sackett's is absolutely beautiful. It's got the character. I think the quality of the architecture in the homes in this town is every bit as good as what they have there. I was just blown away there. I went for a run this morning. It seems like every other house in this town should have a historic plaque in front of it. It's absolutely beautiful. There's condos there in the front. There's nothing wrong with that. You get just thinking about how to do it carefully and appropriately. This is Sodas. This is the yacht club in Sodas Bay or Sodas Point. I think it's Sodas Point. But then here's another outdoor dining experience right there on the water. This is across the street. Now, if I showed you that main street through Sodas, most of you would be like, no, nobody likes the street in the middle where all the motorcycles and cars and all the chaos is. But once you flip to the outside on the water on both sides, it's pretty fantastic. Oh, sorry, it's not moving for me. Come on, there we go. Back to your question earlier about, this is a little town called Manistee in Michigan. When I was growing up, Manistee was smokestacks and walleye fishermen. That's just what we have a ton of these amazing resort type communities from Petoskey and Charlevoix and Holland and all these great places. Manistee was always that place where, it's kind of the Gary of nobody likes it. Well, all that manufacturing, like in almost all of our waterfront communities, left in the 80s. And we helped build a project there that helped, it's similar to this, a waterfront project. and it really brought the town back. For the first 2 years, all the marketing was a picture of the stunning beach in Manistee with the sunset. This is before the Pure Michigan campaign, and you said Manistee. And that was so discordant for people to like try to link the picture of the stunning beach with the word Manistee. Nobody thought that. This downtown had nearly completely collapsed. At the end of the development project, the town had completely rebuilt itself. They actually had to start construction of a second Main Street next door. And this is the part where I usually lose the mayor, but our development manager was then elected mayor. Sorry, Jerry. It won't happen here because anyway, it's just a good example of you can focus on these things. So here's another example of a multi-use space. This is over in Montreal, and what you're looking at is a perched beach because sometimes getting in the water's too cold, right? So we call it a perched beach. It's actually about 18 feet above the river. And so you see it's a cool little beach and these cool little umbrellas, and it's at the tip of this development here. And that marina is there, and it's sitting out here. But what's cool about this is during the daytime, that's what you see. You see tons of kids out there. They got water. Sand by itself isn't very interesting. Sand plus water is magic. You can make anything, right? And so these kids are out here bombing around, going crazy. You'd think they were at a regular beach swimming in the river. They're nowhere near the river. It's way down there. But that's what it looks like during the day. It's a very active kids place. Later on, they're having these different sessions later that same evening. You might be having a wedding event or an office reception or something like that. So there's different ways to use the same space. I just think that's an interesting way to think about it. It doesn't have to be the same all the time. Just some other images. That's pretty built up. This is over in Clayton. We just took this afternoon. We popped over there. Again, as cool as some of the waterfront is in Clayton, this is kind of a big wall. It's kind of a big barrier between them and the water. And this is kind of feels like a back door. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. But one thing I thought was particularly cool is these transient docks. It's very clear where to go, and it's a gateway straight to town. It's super obvious where you go, and you're right there. I thought that was a particularly good solution there. And it's not that many docks. That's probably, depending on how you stage the boats, you might get a dozen boats in there. Maybe it's 6 or 7, depending on the size. And of course, this kind of a cool structure and these kind of cool spaces that are really for the public to get out there and just experience it, whether I'm on the boat or not. I thought that was pretty cool. Kingston, I think everybody seems to love Kingston. Oops, sorry. Oh, this thing popped up. Make that go away. So what do you guys think of Kingston? It seems to be pretty popular.
It used to be.
Yeah, when you could go. Back before we built the wall. So hopefully we'll be able to go back to Kingston this summer, but that's a pretty fantastic. So what do you guys like most about Kingston? It's probably the closest big waterfront space. What do you guys, what's your favorite part about Kingston? Anybody?
Buskers.
The buskers? Yeah.
And I like the old world, feel of it. There's a little bit of a, colonial old world.
Landscaping.
Landscaping?
Yeah.
Looks pretty nice.
Absolutely important, yes.
Yeah.
Outdoor restaurants.
Outdoor restaurants, outdoor dining. Yeah. So not that we want to be Kingston, but what are those things? Those are things you could bring here and do Cape Vincent style. The outdoor dining, the nice landscape, and the old world. I mean, you've got your architecture. It's sort of the same characters. We talked earlier today about supporting the community and supporting the visitors. You got the Roxy. Hopefully that gets back on its feet when COVID comes to pass. But thinking about more ways to get more people to visit here. We're doing the VRBO. Worried about the ice cream shop. I don't know the guy that owns that, so you should hear, but it's fantastic. We're sitting there, we look out the window, there's the water, it's super cool. I think, this idea of somebody suggested, hey, maybe we should do another big hotel to get more room for folks. And I look around and I go, you have this incredible stock of these amazing homes. I know that's where my wife wouldn't go. She said, forget maybe the Roxy, because that's cool. It's in a cool building, but if that's full, she's going to go VRBO and find one of these amazing houses that you guys have. And I think since you don't have a ton of restrictions on short-term rentals for this kind of activity, it's a really great way to sort of build up that capacity. And it's a great area for folks who might leave town or things. And hey, is that a good idea or a bad idea, or do you want more or less of that? Yeah. Would you prefer more people doing VRBO to somebody building another hotel structure?
Yeah.
That was the question. Okay, so Sir, you had a question?
My wife and I own a store in town, and we do a tremendous business with the Canadians. That's why I'm always, looking forward to more dockage for the boats, because we're across from the main dock, and usually that fills up so quickly, and people are always looking for more dockage, and that'd be nice, really would be nice.
Canadians are most of them.
What's that?
I think Canadians are most of our.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Some of our residents would like more dockage too.
Yeah. For seasonal use or for just?
For seasonal use, so they can come in for dinner or whatever. on the boat.
So one of the things, I love my little town, but when I get on my boat, I go out on Lake Michigan, I sail around in circles, and I come back in, because there is nowhere for me to go. I would love to have the opportunity, I can go 18 miles to South Haven, and I do that, but it's like, I'd love to hop on my boat and go half a mile or a mile to some cool destination, get off my boat, do some things, and then go back to my slip. And you have that opportunity here, because you're spread out a little more. So, sir.
Yeah, so I'll put my 2 cents in on what you're actually trying to get the information on. That space that you're developing there, 2 things. People are worried about parking, transit docking, they're showing up with their boats. I would suggest that the ramp, if you did a ramp there, that would be more kayak, optimist dinghies,
Sure.
like something, because if you get trailers there, that's your next problem. So
Not a good place for trailers.
Yeah. So that takes care of the parking part of it. Something that's interesting in this community, so I grew up on the ocean, we're the ones that opened the brewery. So grew up on the ocean, lived in the lakes of Maine, Lake Champlain, met my wife sailing. Someday I will have the business far enough along that I won't be there all the time. I would love starting a sailing program here, which is something that probably, I'm not sure you guys even have a concept. It's all hockey here, it's softball. And you're right, it is a seasonal thing, but a lot of things in those 4 months of the summer. So, but back to that space. So if there was like a minimal building, like something you could do chalk talk with kids, you could use it for other, just a functionality room, or something where you could.
We used to have that at DC.
Yeah, well, that's bringing business into something that's gonna be a not-for-profit, I would do, but that's another whole thing. But, a room that could be used for multi.
Sure.
Back to the smaller ramp idea, again, to control parking, if people, you're making access to the water, which these people don't have. Right, unless you own river property, you're launching your boats or doing whatever you are in all these little parks. That little ramp that I'm talking about, something you could get like kayaks and stuff like, so another low cost thing is racks. Maybe there's some fee where you can bring your kayak there, you can put it in a rack, some small area where we can store I'm talking, if I started a program here, I'm talking six options.
Yeah.
Get kids out on the water, have a fun time. It's a great learning tool. You learn how to sail, you'll do that the rest of your life. It's like golf. But those are like a bunch of different ideas that don't really cost a lot of money. You would have to allot a little bit of the space.
Sure.
But like kayak racks or a little space to have like dinghies on dollies and stuff like that. But the idea of bringing like bass boats there and launching them will be problematic.
Yeah, I would not propose any type of a trailer launch facility downtown. You got one to the east, and that would just create nothing but chaos.
Yep.
But stuff like this, accessible kayak launching,
Perfect, yeah.
take that, stretch it out. We're working with Discovery Center Great Lakes on a whole youth sailing program. We did one in Brooklyn as well. This idea of making the water accessible to everybody, regardless of age, income, or ability, because there's a lot of folks, if you got the money, you can do whatever you want.
Sure.
But most people don't.
Yeah,
Just get real.
Opportunity for the children in this area.
So
I would figure that.
yeah, we talk about ADA compliant access, and there's all these ADA codes and stuff like that. But there's a great way to teach a kid how to, one of the hardest things about the kayak is getting in the water. So get them in dry, put them in the water, let them pedal, at least get them comfortable on the boat, and then you can move them to how do they do that. So that's a fantastic idea, because it's, and also with the rentals, as you suggested, the idea of rentals, I want, you can you should be able to rent a paddleboard or a kayak for $10 an hour. Right. And that means, that doesn't mean every single person can do it, but the vast majority of us can afford $10 an hour occasionally. And I want everybody to feel like this is their water and they can get out there. So I really appreciate that. And your comment too about jet skis and other boats and things.
I'm a resident of the business center. I've got 2 kids, and every summer I call around and try to get a jet ski rental, because I have my boat license, I try to get a boat rental, whatever. And the one I'm Clayton, and I think there's one that might be out in Alice Bay, but they're always sold out by this minute. I don't want to sit in my house with my 2 kids. I want to get out and get back to it. Some of the things they can't do, you know, where we are. And there's never, ever any availability of, you know, the jet skis or the kayaks that go on Fort John River, which is not a problem.
Sure. Yeah, it's a business opportunity for sure. Yeah.
And one last thing I forgot on my first rant was, I'm new to this area. You guys all know that. You do have to realize you're the first in the river and the last out.
Yeah.
So my wife works for the Seaway, like regardless of what size boat you're on, everybody that comes into the river right now, they know for a fact for refuge or wherever they're gonna go for gas or whatever, they have to go straight to Clayton. So you are bypassing your community. So any revenue that you're talking about making or whatever, they're going right by here. Except for the beautiful day, they hit the dock at their space or whatever. To have something like this to where I'll put sailing or most boating for it, like if you're gonna go to Sackett Harbor from here, the lake gets pretty ugly out there. You may say you're leaving Clayton and you're like, yeah, we're gonna go for it. And they get to the lake, it's pretty scary. To have a space that they can hold up for 1 night or 2 nights and let the wind lay down or weather lay down a little bit, and all they're doing is hanging out in our community and spending money. Because they have to do something. They're not gonna sit on their boats. Most boaters that come to transit docking, they don't hang out on their boats.
Yeah.
Because that's what they've been doing the whole time that they've been moving. So
That harbor
they tie up, they're out of there.
Yeah, boating cruising like that, if you're not a cruising boater, I mean, I was 2 years ago trying to go from Charlevoix to Leland, which should not be a big deal, but I come out and I turn the corner and now I'm facing a 300-mile fetch out of the southwest, and it went from 4 to 6 foot waves, which I could tolerate, to 10 to 12 foot waves. And it's just me and my wife and kids on the boat, and the kids aren't, I'm like, this is not, I mean, this is how you end up on CNN. This is not a good decision. But of course, I'm the world's greatest sailor, so I can do this, right? Because I am, of course, invincible. And then I'm like, after about 2 miles of that, I went, maybe I'm not entirely invincible. And Northport is lovely this time of year. And I turned around and we dropped in Northport, and we ended up spending about $150 on 4 meals, waiting for the weather to clear. And Northport was all the happier for it, and I loved it. So you're spot on. That's exactly what happens. You get blown up, you have to have that. So, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's good.
You've heard everything mentioned tonight, that is true. We're known for fishing, we're known for boating. I think Roland brought up a great point that we need to do something for the kids, and a thing that keeps them what the community is known for. But what you haven't mentioned, and nobody's mentioned, and if you're around here any length of time, they're everywhere, and they're really important to people, are their dogs.
Yeah.
And what do we have for them?
Yeah, so dog park, that's a really good point.
Need a dog park.
Yeah, thank you.
We
Sir.
need something.
With that space, first of all, it's not huge.
Nope.
Yeah.
And obviously, we need a seawall of some sort to stop the water. If you look at a lot of the places around, next to the seawall is a sidewalk. Maybe someone's throwing a fishing pole over the edge, but it's not very big. Now, you mentioned 4 food trucks. There's a street there. Obviously, on the street, maybe we need a curb that is no parking, but if a food truck came in, you make the exception. We're gonna do a food truck rodeo so they can park in the no parking spot. Next to the curb, you want another walkway. Take away all the houses, what's left? Green space. So very simple is kind of a mini East End Park, but with a bathroom. And if you want a bathroom, then maybe you need a little awning space like East End Park, get that house.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Your water gets hard here in the winter. So we should talk a little bit about snow and off season, right? We've talked a lot about the tourists and the boaters. You know, fun ideas, you know, the ice skating rinks out on the lake and all that sort of stuff. There's that marina I showed you earlier with the blue umbrellas with that perched beach over in Montreal. In the wintertime, they fill up all the slips in the marina. Half of them have tents and the other half have little wood, man cave, little sheds. and they're fishing. I'm pretty sure since they're plugged into power, they're watching hockey and drinking beer. But they're not under their, they're not at home bothering their wives. But they make as much money, that marina, they told me, I don't know this for a fact, but the guy who runs the place, he said he makes as much money, and on some of the slips makes more money renting them to ice fishermen in the wintertime than he does renting to boaters in the summertime. I understand your fishing here in the winter is pretty spectacular. So it's just another idea, thinking creatively and differently. You slide the sheds out. I think you got a guy on Main Street or on Broadway selling sheds. There's people around that know how to do this, right? So that was an interesting idea. I like the ice volleyball. It's kind of fun. Little kids on the sleds. That's kind of cool. Ice show, ice art festivals, ice carvings, ice sculptures. That's fun. Farmers markets. I'm shifting gears a little bit. What's interesting about this picture is this is the farmers market, and this is the same place. It's a parking lot. But the way they designed the parking spaces is they made them a little bit longer so that on market day, it works fine that way. And on regular days, it works fine. So again, that multiple thinking more flexible, being more flexible in how you design infrastructure. We had I think I saw her come in here. Where the foods and markets and local agriculture. There we go. There you are. Huge opportunity. I mean, you guys, there's a little bit of agriculture on what an opportunity to take advantage of that. Healthy living, low cost food, farm to table, stuff like that is fantastic. Again, thinking about this waterfront edge, this kind of cool dynamic edge where boaters, everybody can interact in these paths along the water. Fun stuff. Just again, thinking about how this works. I'm required in all my presentations to have a gratuitous picture of my children. That's my daughter about 7 years ago, this little pink nugget there. Her twin brothers off to the side. Anyway, sorry. This is Grand Haven, again in Michigan. Again, sorry, but thinking about the fish cleaning, in this location, it's a destination. I mean, the crowds this is a 4-sided fish cleaning station, and everybody wants to do it. So one of the things I'd suggest you do, if you think about, these little signs, that's where they hang the fish up and they do the picture and all that. You probably have somebody in town who's a great photographer, right? Or maybe dozens. We're fortunate in my little town. We've got this guy named Josh Nowicki who I don't know what he does, but he seems to be 24 hours a day out there taking amazing pictures, because every single day he posts 2 or 3 pictures that are just mind-blowingly beautiful. That's a word. And when people find us, I think they think we live in paradise, but just having somebody out there constantly pushing beautiful images, Kate Vincent out on Facebook, is a great thing. It's a great way to promote your community to everybody else, and it's cheap and free. And for that person, they're marketing their photography. So maybe you have somebody already doing it, but that just popped up in my mind as a really, I'm not a big social media fan, but that's a cool thing. That's a cool way to get just so people start to associate these cool, amazing views that they might not think of. They might not see these cool little special places, and they're gonna say, I want to go to Cape Vincent and find that. I didn't realize that amazing view existed or something. This is a cool little splash pad. This could be something fun like this. Again, something for the kids. We haven't talked about kids a lot, but splash pads are you can make a small one, huge ones. Again, that's just a sort of a fun idea. So we've talked about a ton of ideas. I guess before we jump into figuring out how to pay for it all, because that is a part of this, I want to just kind of take a step back. You saw a ton of images. We talked a little bit about Kingston and what you like there. So what are the other places that you guys think, when you think of your favorite little waterfront places in the world, what are the places and special spots in those spaces that you think you'd like to bring a little of that essence here? Again, I don't want to turn you into something else, but we talked about the outdoor dining and those things at Kingston. So what are the other places around that you think are really special that we should be thinking about? Any suggestions?
A nice thing about Clayton, I mean, we don't want to be a Clayton, but they have this beautiful, long, skinny pavilion.
Mm-hmm.
And 97 colored
Adirondack
chairs.
Yeah.
We're not Clayton, but you could easily stick that there and it would look pretty.
Well, what's cool about that is that's the iconic postcard picture that everybody takes. And so when you go to Clayton, you got to get your picture taken in front of the Clayton sign with which is cool. So
The train station.
yeah.
Now
So
it's a train station.
yeah, is it? Okay. but so, you know, something like that, where there's some sort of an iconic spot, so.
Those chairs are dedicated by families to their past loved ones.
Oh, that's cool.
I go there all the time with my kids and my dog, and we eat pizza and
Mhm.
hang out there. And I go around and I look at all the names and the dedicated memory of like dad or grandma.
Sure.
So those members of the public are never like lost entirely. You can go sit and hang out with the Adirondack chairs, like they're just sitting there with you. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, and people tend to be less likely to throw those chairs in the river and do stupid vandalism things.
To the ground.
Yeah. Well, there's that. I'd like to avoid that, ma'am.
Read the,
He was pointing to me, George.
Not just in Saga's Harbor, Canandaigua, the streetscapes are beautiful.
Mhm.
You know, it's not just a sidewalk, there's an inset of a garden.
Yeah.
How did we know all Liz would bring up a garden? But
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful, and the trouble is, you know, it's the state route, do we have to get them involved? I'd love to get them involved to pay for it, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's just beautiful. It's so inviting, and
Yeah, I would, certainly with a state route, you deal with right-of-way issues. But I think we have evolved. 20 years ago, it was really hard to get DOTs to come along. It's not as hard. It's still a battle.
and Club Street isn't.
Yeah,
You know, that's
exactly.
that's an
Yeah.
area you could incorporate it.
Yeah. Sir?
the train station, I'm sorry, the pavilion in Clayton is almost an exact copy of the train station that used to be there, but it's also was a steamboat station, very, very similar to what we have at Anchor Marine that's privately owned
Mhm.
and vacant.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it does look quite similar.
So there's a seaside town in Southern California that instead of the regular concrete sidewalks, did ones where I think it was local school kids, but essentially made these nice paintings, these nice designs. Obviously, you were able to walk on them. So my suggestion would be to think about doing something like that. So don't do I mean, obviously you need to have it that you can walk on it, that it's accessible, but the same gray concrete that everybody else has, which is kind of dull and boring.
Sure. Did you have
And I like the idea of a outdoor market, once a week or something like this, a farmer's market or anything that once a week brings, people into the village.
Any other suggestions over here?
I'm going to be the devil's advocate. Most of us are here because it's a very peaceful and quiet.
Mhm.
What is our 5-year plan? I mean, this has to serve a purpose. It either serves a purpose during summer to bring in folks,
Mhm.
or during the non-seasonal time for us to utilize it as a community, right? How do we see that happening? I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because when the summer people leave, we become very happy in this village. We need to think about that. In 5 years, we might become an A-Bay.
Yeah.
If we don't plan it carefully.
Yeah, I think clearly,
That's why I said I'm good.
if I were to summarize the conversations for today, and many of you were some of these, there's an absolute recognition that there's a distinct quaintness, character, a quality. It was really almost a quality. The quality of the architecture, the quality of the environment is significantly higher than some of these other places. And I think that's recognized and certainly appreciated. And I would argue that anything that we do here that works for the tourists that doesn't work for the residents the rest of the time is wrong. So it's important that we draw them in, but what's most attractive to visitors is being in a community that the community loves.
Yeah.
Because you can sense that, right? When you're in a community that you can tell the people that they're just happy to live here.
Yeah.
Like I love where I live, this cute little town and all this stuff. And we know when it's spring because the Chicago people show up and start honking their horns. Nobody honks a horn in our town for 9 months of the year, but boy, somewhere about this weekend in May, the Chicago people have arrived, and God bless them because they dump piles and piles of cash into our town. Love them. So we have a special name for them. They're called FIPS, Friendly Illinois People. Some people use a different F word. We love them though, it's fun. But your exact point is anything that you build, it has to be thought of as, how does this work? You know, when I think about parking spaces, yeah, there's always going to be a parking problem in the summertime. I worry for the businesses around here of empty parking spaces in October. We want to make sure that, you know, that there's still life here, that the sidewalks don't get rolled up. And, you know, Ben had a crisis this morning because it was 7:45 and there was no coffee to be had. Thank God for the lady at the gas station. He was twitching, he's walking around. So we've requested an early opening of someone's gonna open the coffee shop early for us tomorrow. So we don't lose Ben. So we have some comments back here. Sorry. Go ahead. Okay, you go. He's waiting on you.
Me.
Yep.
So I've written down some things, they don't all fit in with Club Street.
For
Is
sure.
that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, well, this is Club Street, down by Mr. Trottier's marina and the village dock. In the front of his marina used to be an art gallery. He rented it to a group of people, Breakwater Gallery. So it's white and then he kicked them out, that's it. Then he kicked them out and he had plans for it, which never materialized. And now it's an antique place that doesn't open. I mean, if there was some way to purchase, I mean, I know that he has bathroom facilities for his boaters, but even to purchase that and expand it outward, to make it something that people want to go to, a little bookstore, a little sandwich shop, a little whatever. I think that, or a permanent home for the art gallery.
Sure.
That's one.
Very good idea.
I don't know if these are, I'd love to see somewhere a museum of the river. Now, maybe it wouldn't be in the village, maybe it would have to be in the town, something that showcases the history of the river,
There is already.
You're already in.
There is a
Yeah.
chamber pattern.
Now, that's the village of Cape Vincent Museum. I'm talking about a museum of the river, which focuses on the history of the settlements in the river and the fishing and the seaway and the flora and the fauna.
Sure.
That
Ships.
and so and maybe it's curved like the river would be.
Sure.
Okay.
But again, tell the story. Yeah.
Tell the story of the river. I'd love to see, as many of us have talked about, a pedestrian connection, a really nice one between East End Park and the Club Street. You know, so those people are directed downtown. Right now, there isn't a pedestrian. I mean, there are sidewalks.
You can do it. I ran it this morning, but it doesn't feel great.
Yeah. And again, it could be beautiful. It could have lots of streetscape. I love the idea of the kayaks and canoes being encouraged. I love the splash pad. I love the food truck thing because I'm a foodie. I think we have to have a place that's selling gas on a regular basis. I mean.
For Marine?
Yeah. And, you know, gazebo, maybe down at Club Street. I don't know, can you close off parts of the streets, certain streets for pedestrians, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's great.
and I want a center for the arts in Cape Vincent.
Yeah.
Cape Vincent has a small but vibrant community of artists. We hosted international piano competition here. It's unique. There are kids to come from all over the world to play the piano in Cape Vincent.
Really? Where is there?
Right now, it's hosted at a private home, Maple Grove. You might have, it's in a tent. People sit there, they watch the pianist, and they're watching the river, and they're watching the ships go by as the pianist is playing. It's free. I would love to, those people aren't going to be around forever. I need to find a home for it.
So a Center for the Arts, it's not just, visual arts, but performing arts.
Performing arts, visual arts, I love tech. My dream, sorry, Danny, is that those three people who own that triangle on Club Street, sell it to the, and then we build a ship pro home for the Arts Center with glass looking out on the river.
There you go. All right. Excellent.
I like to dream big.
I love it. In the back.
There was a meeting about a month ago that talked about primarily the East End Park. But one of the things that was brought up was there's grant money available through the highway department to put a sidewalk along that street. And that sidewalk could easily turn right at the American Legion area monument and continue along all the way to the ferry point. And it could easily be integrated with green space.
Excellent. All right, I just looked at it's 8:06. So I promise you we'd be done at 8. I'm going to jump to our section here on some funding, and then I will stay here until everybody has had a chance to tell us anything they want. But I do want to be respectful of your time. So let's jump into this real quick and have Matt walk us through some of the programs that are out there.
Sure.
And he's a former city manager, actually, so he's actually pulled this off in places. So why don't you take it over, man?
And I was gonna say, the early statement about New York's generosity with your money is absolutely accurate. I've worked all over the country and no places like New York when it comes to reinvesting in these communities. And I'll also say that in Cape Vincent, you got one of the best in the biz who's out there beating the bushes for you for grant dollars. So we put together a list of actual grant opportunities. This is stuff that Scott already knows inside and out and that your respective boards are already doing. But I did want to touch on something that came up or kind of early in the discussion. And someone in the audience was talking about, hey, this has to pencil out. This has to make economic sense, right? And so there's, when we think about investments like this, I think about, it's a big project, right? We're looking at it. Our little piece that we're planning today are these couple of parcels, but we're really talking about how it impacts the total community. And so when I think about big projects like this, I stop saying the town should, right? If we're going to tackle this as a big project, we have to move our narrative from the town should do this or the village should do that to with the town and village's help, we can, right? And so if you think about capital projects in particular, I think about them in some big cost chunks. We got to acquire it. We got to build it. We got to operate it, and we got to maintain it, right? And all that's got to pencil out because only two people pay for this. Other people and you people. Those are the only two pots of money out there, right? People from out of town, people from in town. So I just wanted to reassure you that as we're thinking about implementation, we're trying to find as much OPM, right? Other people's money so that we don't have to spend these people's money, okay? And there's a bunch of mechanisms that we can do that with. So the first is, believe it or not, donation. So I heard a crazy theory, not really crazy if you know the backstory, but somebody mentioned, we were talking about people who don't keep their properties up really well. And there are a few, very few in Cape Vincent, but there are some. And when we were talking about a couple of particular case studies, someone said, well, they like to keep that to take the loss. Right? They take the loss on the property so it offsets their taxes. Well, I've been working in economic development for a long time, and I can tell you that's the dumbest way I've ever heard of making any kind of money. But if the person is that concerned about tax benefit, we can help them out on the other side. You have an organization regionally, the Thousand Islands Land Trust. The Thousand Islands Land Trust is happy to accept tax deductible donations of property. And once those tax deductible donations of property are made and the land trust now owns them, the land trust is restricted in how it can use that property. And it can be used for purposes just like this. So there are cases all over the country and right here in New York State where people do see tax advantage by donating property. And so when we're talking about with the village's help, with the town's help, we should start thinking about that strategically. Where are there opportunities to receive donations? Public-private partnerships. We talked a lot about marina today, gas, ship store, this kind of thing. In other communities, in larger portside cities, or even in smaller communities, we see public-private partnerships whereby that's considered a concession. Someone will actually pay the village for the right to operate a concession like that, right? They'll engage in revenue sharing. So if you are looking for fuel, or you are looking for a ship store style amenity, the person will pay the village for the privilege of operating on their property. And that way we don't end up with the village or the town getting in the business of running a convenience store, right? That's not what we want. We want the village or the town focusing on. So think about public-private partnerships, grants. I know this seems like a big project. I know it seems like a monumental task. I'll share one case study with you. I was the city manager of a little city called Geneva out in the Finger Lakes. And we had a project like this actually funded through this program, the local waterfront revitalization program. And we did a nice big plan like the one we're hoping to engage in here. And they came to us and said, the consultants came to us at the end and said, it's just $30 million. And my whole budget was $15 million a year for everything. And they said, well, this little park project is just going to be $30 million. And we sat down and we unpacked it piece by piece by piece. We said, what's the most important thing? What's most impactful to the residents? And what's most likely to be economically impactful to the community? And we started applying for grants. And we started beating the bushes. We started going to private property owners. We started going to state and federal agencies. And at the end of the day, when I left Geneva in 2019, that was 9 years after I got that $30 million bill, or that $30 million quote. And we had actually invested $40 million, and the city had invested $4 million. We were able to chase out federal, state, and private sources to pay for the rest of that investment. It is possible.
We're actually in the final engineering phase and permitting for the marina in that plan. We did the market study to prove out the demand for all the transient boating. And then we went out and got a transient boating infrastructure grant, and we're in final permitting to get that done. That's an outgrowth of that plan, and it's being paid for with outside dollars.
Yeah, at 75%. So the state paid 75% of the cost of building that marina. It will pay.
Well, federal, it's actually Fish and Wildlife, but
Yeah.
still, yeah.
$7 million project total, right? Or how much is it total?
The marina project, that now I'm out of it.
I gotta dive back into that. We're actually solving that with the dredge question, but the point is these things.
Referring to the Cape project.
Yeah.
So $6 million worth of ready money, and that project's 95% grant.
95?
The village is only putting in 5% of that $6 million. The additional $1.2 million is the Club Street grant, which they're putting in 25%. So out of the million, it's a little over $1 million. They're putting in like 280,000, the town is, on the Club Street grant for the 840 grant.
Okay.
So, but the ready projects that the
Is it still the
village,
25% additional for that other project? Is that still a resident problem for Cape Vincent, or is it not?
that's the money that we've convinced the Department of State to accept the purchase offer on Captain Jack's, the local share, which the town was already buying before the grant was awarded. So a majority of that local share is just the acquisition of Captain Jack.
I'm not against it, but my concern is the infrastructure that comes in. I'm not opposed to infrastructure. I want to improve the community, but you guys are like the fourth person or fourth company that's come in 8 months. Like I was in deployment training when Verizon was in my backyard putting up a 150-foot tower. And I wasn't even notified. So for me, it's kind of personal when I have people in my yard. And I'm not even getting a conversation or a knock on the door. And then roundabout, it ends up being me and other people who foot the bill. And again, I'm not opposed to infrastructure, but it's frustrating when big companies come in making millions of dollars off of it. And we're paying millions on top of it. And we're kind of left after like, okay, well, did this really work? What did this really solve them?
Yeah, so two things. I think you're asking the right question, right? I'll never tell you you're gonna get anything for free. It just doesn't happen, right? And so someone asked a question earlier, what's in it for us? What's in it for the year-round resident? It's great to hear that we're gonna try to attract tourism because we can pick their pockets, right? We pick their pockets, they go home, we keep their money, we spend it on stuff we want to spend it on. But we have to make sure that either their money is covering 100% of the bill, or we're getting some beneficial use out of what's left, right? That the amenity we build has a dual purpose. One, to serve tourists, which is to say, to keep them here long enough to pick their pockets. And two, that when they're gone, I got a nice shady spot to sit. My kids have a nice place to play. So what I will say to you is, no, you will not get anything for free. There will almost always be a local share, a local investment. And then it's a question for the community. Will this market pay off? Will this investment pay off? Or is it worth us spending some of our tax dollars so we can have a nice local amenity? And that's the question you're getting.
What if we minimize the cost by maintaining instead of tearing it down and then rebuilding it? I mean, how many of those 4 or 5 buildings are structurally safe right now?
They're not.
What it costs less to improve the structure to be safe than to tear down and rebuild it?
No, not those.
Taking them down to open up the green space and provide better amenities
For
for
a
the
building,
public.
it's like $843,000. Like, I'm not there to hammer.
You get the dock building business.
I was just gonna say, the short version is, there's lots of resources out there. You have to be very creative. You have to stay engaged. The people in this room are gonna be the folks where we get the creative ideas to finance this work. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, will this investment pencil?
And I was just going to add from a funding standpoint, your town and village board have been very active at pursuing the grant dollars that are available and working within the program, and to receive $6 million of state funding at a 5% local share through the state program. The state's going to spend that $6 million somewhere. So you have a very active town and village board that are trying to take advantage of that and bring in a $6 million investment into your community, where those state dollars are going to go somewhere regardless if you're pursuing it or Clayton's pursuing it. I think from a local perspective, to get $6 million at 5% is proactive by your boards to improve amenities for the residents here as well.
I'm gonna do a couple of things, just because we're way over time. But so what's gonna happen next is Ben's taking 73 pages of notes here. We're gonna be drawing our brains out all day tomorrow in this room. We'll be in here drawing, coming up with ideas. Tomorrow night, same time, same channel, hopefully not as long. We'll put these ideas up on the screen and just talk through them and get your feedback on them. And then we're gonna keep working on that. So I just wanna put this up. You have these note cards. I forgot to tell you about the note cards. Leave us a note. If there's anything out here that you have an opinion on, that not everybody wants to raise their hand and talk in a room like this. So please leave us a note. Write your ideas down on your paper. Leave it up here with Ben and with us. I'm going to stay here and answer questions as long as you'd like. Here's our email addresses. If you don't want to do a note, you just want to type us a quick email and say, hey, here's my idea. Please do that. So we absolutely want everybody's opinion. One of the things that sometimes happens in meetings like this is there's some people that are willing to get up and they can dominate it. We want to hear everybody's voice, not just loud people like me. So I appreciate your time, and I'm going to keep going, but we've held you a long time. So
I just like to say, from the community, the village, and the town, and the steering committee, we thank all of your input. And I just want to let you know, from a community standpoint, the steering committee and the private meetings we had today, we heard 95% of the same comments you guys have made tonight. So it's very reassuring that everybody has the same image and ideals moving forward on what benefit the community. We've heard them all day long, and we're hearing the same things tonight. So everybody is being well represented for sure. So thank you.
Thank you.